talk to the training opportunities that we have now for IIOM certification. So, we got obviously Butch here as usual. Tim, I guess you want to start out with a little bit of an introduction and, who you are and what IIOM is and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Vernon. Thank you, Butch. So my name's Tim Elliott. I'm the head of the obsolescence management capability within Allan Webb. I've been with Allan Webb for about 5 years now. Previous to that, I've worked for the MOD and some other primes like Thales and Jacobs before it became Momentum. Been involved with doing obsolescence for about the last 30 years on both the industrial side and on the civil servants or the MOD side. And then transitioned into industry a few years ago, looking at supportability and especially where obsolescence acts as a transversal to a lot of the lines of defence, like your training and logistics support and supply chain. So I find obsolescence, although it's a dry subject, is quite important and doesn't get the recognition it probably needs to. So I just wanted to talk about Allan Webb in terms of our association with IIOM. Allan Webb's a corporate member of IIOM, has been for about the last 5 years. I've been elected to the IIOM UK Council chapter, so I've got a 3-year tenure there. I also sit on the IEC 62402 2019 revamp of the standard, so we're going through the 3 parts of the standard, and that should be coming out around 2027, I believe. So as we said, the key thing here is talking about the IIOM training. So Allan Webb is an endorsed IIOM trainer, that is, or training delivery partner. That is to say that the material that we've got, which runs our course of 19 modules, is set against the syllabus, which is owned by IIOM UK chapter, actually owned by IIOM International, and our course material is compliant to that syllabus. We, as a training provider, we have to vet our trainers who can deliver the material. So that's our responsibility to make sure that they are a minimum of a full member of IIOM, and that the knowledge, skills and experience reflect what we would expect to be able to deliver that training in a comprehensive manner and allow the delegates to have that experience. And if there were questions that were off-piste, so to people to be able to understand those and provide a rounded response. So I think when we look at IIOM as an organisation, I'm just sort of looking at this verbatim now. The course that's offered is several advantages, including career advancement, enhanced knowledge of obsolescence risk, and improve organisational performance. A lot of the information around the training is actually on the IIOM website, so I won't bore you with everything. But I think that gives you an overview of what we want to do with our training. And the reason that we've teamed up with Blue Water is that we felt that the US, as the US chapter was growing, that there was a really good opportunity to share our knowledge and experience with an organisation like Blue Water, and especially with an individual like Vernon, who's got a lot of experience in this field. So thank you, Butch, and thank you, Vernon, for giving us that opportunity to work with you guys.
Yeah, it's great being able to do this. It's something again that is needed here in the U.S., and being able to partner with Allan Webb, who's got a lot of experience in doing these trainings, is going to make us be able to be more effective a lot faster. And that's really what's important. And as you said, I am a full member, got vast experience in obsolescence management and in doing training and teaching and building tools and everything else. So it's why I'm able to be endorsed by you guys to be one of your trainers is because I do have that real world experience. So
just to add to that, I mean, we do have a pedigree of delivering a lot of OM training. I mean, the countries that we've delivered in, sort of Norway, Holland, Malaysia, Nigeria, Finland, Oman, Singapore, and numerous primes as well, like Thales, General Dynamics Land Systems. We've even had guys come over from GD in the US to attend our courses as well. So, Lockheed Martin, Leonardo, all the major primes that we've provided obsolescence training to. And again, it's amazing how the different job functions, it's not just obsolescence managers or engineers, it's design engineers, product managers. We've even had MD, managing directors, company directors attend to have that understanding and knowledge that we can deliver. So yeah, it's really, really good time. Really good time.
Yeah, and that's a good
Yeah,
point.
I mean,
Yeah,
it is a good point. I mean, I've wallowed in the obsolescence world for over 2 decades, and that's largely what we do. Buyers, obsolescence, if they're doing their job well and the organization is doing its job well, they maybe 5% of the time they're having to worry about it, but that's a very critical 5%, and that's why we've existed as an organization for as long as we have, just helping people out. But I think, and I'm very happy to have this partnership, because with the onshoring of actual chip manufacturing in America, seems a reason that those chips are going to evolve pretty quickly. So I mean, before it was 5 years for an obsolescence, and it's 3 now. It's 18 months for a chip to basically be phased out. So if we're not getting the word out to engineers, and as you say, Tim, like the design engineers, don't design in a part that's going to be obsolete in 2 months. I mean, your organization is going to be painted in a corner there from a supply chain perspective. So there's a lot of things that I think people kind of take for granted. And if you can look at it through a lens of obsolescence, you're going to be far, far better off.
I'll probably go one step further than that. Say you ought to look at it from a lens of supportability, because obsolescence is one trigger that means you can't get the item you need when you need it. And of course, that impacts so many other facets. When you're looking at your procurement, your supply chain, understand the resilience of your supply chain. And any sort of data-rich environment, doesn't have to be aerospace. It can be rail. It can be, utilities, energy, oil and gas. All of these are in the same boat. They're all suffering because they don't have a through-life plan of what that asset needs to do. When does it need to change? When is the percentage of risk of that asset availability going to come to fruition? And then on the horizon, you've got legislation, policy, and regulation. What impact's that going to have, and how are you going to manage that? And then you couple that with, global events that go on, whether they be conflicts or otherwise. What impact will that have on your availability of your systems? And certainly with more and more systems, becoming, I don't like to use the term legacy, but I use the term aging, but it still means they need to be supported. The money isn't there to buy new all the time as there was, in the the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. We're having to make aging equipment last a lot longer than its original design, and in doing so, we've got to change our philosophy of support to ensure that the spares procurement and the tech refreshes and the refresh planning, all of which goes to what needs to be done, to support the end user and provide, whatever the capability needs to carry on.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things a lot of people miss, even on the defense side. They basically everything's about production, right? It's my production line's going to stop. My production line, is going to be impacted. A lot of times they forget about that whole sustainability thing and warranties. And that's really, I think, where, where a lot of people miss out is, okay, yeah, we can do redesigns really quick if we're a, commercial company. And, they don't think about but I'm giving warranties out, and if I have to warranty this product for 10 years, I still need those parts. And there's a cost involved in that. So that really, you know, when you talk about the sustainability and especially with these aging systems, I mean, when you get to the DoD side, you know, if they tell you the lifespan of a product is, you know, 30 years, plan on it being 50 to 60.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
I mean, we quite literally yesterday we were looking for parts that were from the mid 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens more often than, I mean, that's Ronald Reagan was president. It's
Right.
astonishing.
Right.
Margaret Thatcher. I mean, it's amazing the time scales that you're dealing with in terms of obsolescence.
But I think one of the key things that is going on really is the data, the need to get the data. And where can you pull this data from? That's out there in the domain, and so to inform the end user what the obsolescence threat is to their systems and hence capabilities. So we're seeing more and more requirements for a lot more data that's probably never been asked for before. Certainly when you're sort of looking at product security now, and designs have got to be supportable through life, whereas you just hand them off and that's it. Certainly if you're an organization that sells products and you know that your product will be around for 12 months and then you'll move on to the next product, but then a system integrator needs to take those products and manage those and integrate them and support them. So what does that look like? And I think it's an environment which is, we've been doing it for years, but we don't really fully understand the implications and from an obsolescence standpoint, that as a transversal, that impact that has across the whole supportability piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you and Vern are going to bring to bear, which is, it's astonishing how disconnected sometimes just buyers are from the rest of the organization. Because when they really do face something, they get a contract gets renewed, somebody's not paying attention, they agree to something, and there's 400 parts left of something, and they're used to paying $20 and now they're $200. I mean, sometimes that can cost more than the product they're selling. I mean, then you get the chief financial officers, you get the finance guys involved, the engineers are involved. Can we redesign it? What's the time frame to do that? Oh, it's going to cost $1 million to redesign. So I mean, if you can kind of get a full, think to your original point, Tim, if you can get the entire organization, or at least the critical players in an organization, aware of the fact that this is a risk, this is something to plan around, and even it's possibly going to be inevitable. I mean, I think it's like 30% of chip companies do not let you know that they're going obsolete with specific product lines. I mean, you could quite literally not know. So it's astonishing to me. We see this very frequently, where it will go up to the C-suite level sometimes, because the costs will get obscene, and it's not the $20 anymore. So what do we do here? So it's just, I guess, the part that I think most organizations can benefit from. It's not just going to be compartmentalized to the buyers, who then have to get flogged because they're presenting this information. Everybody's got some buy-in here. Engineering knows, don't design in old stuff, or quickly figure out an alternative. The CFO is not going to get mad because he's fully aware of the fact that obsolescence is going to be an ongoing bit of the calculus for the business, and they should plan for it. And if they plan for it, it's not going to be as disruptive.
Well, agreed. And then, I mean, I've in my experience, I've seen buyers, buy all the product they need to build the capability or the platform, but it might be, if it's a long during build or build schedule, you might not require those parts until 5 years hence. Well, by then, a lot of them are obsolete. The configuration is unknown. Any patching requirements, any software patching requirements haven't been applied. Just because it was a good idea to save a few dollars, back in the time of when that was happened. So again, I think we need to understand build schedules and what's the best plan to apply for those. So you do get the economies of scale, which means you need to collaborate with those, with your supply chain to get that. And it's not just a question of buy all the stock at once, and then try and work that out from a timetable perspective in build. We've got to do things a lot smarter and a lot better than we currently are, in my view.
One thing that I think, down the road, hopefully business schools will wake up to the fact that, I don't know when it was, just 25 years ago, 20 years ago, the introduction of just-in-time inventory. Okay, let's just keep our inventory as lean and mean as possible. We don't want to be taxed on it. That's great if you're dealing with chemicals or, soil or, like bikes. But when you're dealing with 150, sub electronic components that go into your finished product, and they're coming and going, like they're, constantly being redesigned and obsolete, just-in-time inventory is bad practice. So, even just, maybe you should recalculate things and actually, go out and buy the 5 years worth of stock and put it on the shelf, or work out some kind of agreement with the distributor where they'll hold it, they'll bill it for you later. But, this kind of we're just going to buy 70 pieces right now and hope for the best. It's not a viable plan, and I think this kind of training should open some eyes, because there's a big disconnect from just in time, planning from a tax perspective to actually getting product out the door to your customers and honoring contracts, because you're making it much harder than I think it needs to be.
Yeah.
No, I'd agree.
So Tim, why don't you actually tell us a little bit about what the training looks like, how it kind of, how it works, what people should expect, those kind of things.
Okay. There are 19 modules within the IIOM syllabus. There's sort of 18 topics that we cover, ranging from supply chain to configuration management to writing an OMP, an obsolescence management plan, logistics support, a bit of integrated support, logistics support as well. I think what we could do, Vernon, would there be ability when we come to edit this, we could put up a sheet showing actually what the topics are for the modules?
Yep.
Would that work? Yeah, we could do that as a go-to, so we can arrange that to happen. But basically, that would give you, although it's generalized, it does give you a really good insight into the sort of questions and the things that you need to understand around your product, and certainly how you would interface to other job functions. That's one thing we also do is tailor some of the modules that are specific. So if you were looking at engineers, for instance, you wouldn't take all 19 modules. You would take the select. I think there's about 5 that you'd select those. You'd optimize those for the client, making sure that you've got the right terminology and vocabulary in there, so that client's people, assets would understand that. And then we've delivered that. So that could be like a 2 hour or half a day type of scenario. So that's something else that we offer based on using the IIOM modules. So in essence, as I say, there's 19 modules. You attend the course. We're looking to go from a 3-day course down to a 2-day course, where we won't be skipping the content of the modules. It will just be a higher level, but the information will be there, and our doors are always open for people to come back and to discuss, which I think is what we were talking about earlier, Vernon, about having this obsolescence management academy and an obsolescence management community practice, where that we can share this information, and if people have got questions, we can have a portal or something that will allow people to share information and get the answers they want. So once you've done that, you've attended the course. If you wanted to be an associate of IIOM accredited, then you then attend a 1-hour open book multi-choice exam. So you're given 60 questions and you are allowed to look through your notes, and you've got 1 hour to do it. As I say, that's multi-choice. And the second part of the exam or of the test is you need to supply an OMP, an obsolescence management plan of your choice. It can be either work-related or a fictitious product, however you want to play it. But following the OMP module will give you all the information you need to produce an OMP that will be compliant to IEC 6402 2019. Once that's done, I think you have up to 3 months to do that. Once you've done that and you've passed both of those, then yes, you can then apply to become IIOM. Use those post-nominals after your name. After your name. So it's quite a slick process. The material is supposed to be agnostic of domain, so it's not defense centric. There will be, and we're also should be agnostic of country or continent. So where we look at the IEC 6402 when we're contracted against that, in the US you tend to be SD22 and SD26, DMSMS. There's references to those, so I think it's a multinational course that will allow maybe a few tweaks required just to get that terminology sorted out. But in essence, it's all good to go, and we're talking about that to see how that needs to be updated to reflect the US market.
Yep. Yeah, we're definitely doing that, and of course, if I'm the one doing training, it's going to be my experience. So even though I've got, a lot of the defense contracts experience, I also have experience working with customers from, my other roles in all different industries, so medical and automotive and consumer products. So.
And I think that this is where I'm seeing a shift in, or we're seeing a shift in requirements, if you will, such as, where industry tend to be looking at the component, the item level, the system level, observing the risk associated with that, and at which point, do they go for the cost avoidance of the 10 cases or 10 alternatives that are mentioned in the standard. When you come to UK MOD, and I guess the same with the DoD, where they're more interested in the asset availability or sustainment, that's the information that they want to know. They want to know what the risk is to the platform or the capability. And that's what the obsolescence risk is. And there'll be other risks as well that will be, inferred. So again, it's the availability or the sustainment or the readiness, which is a term I'm hearing being used nowadays, for that capability to be used in anger whenever it's needed or planned to be used. Yes. So all of this I think is key, and obsolescence plays an important factor. But there are other issues that need to be considered when alongside obsolescence when looking at capability and availability and readiness.
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, I would say 90% of buyers can benefit from this, but there are certain arenas where it should almost be mandatory, because the evolution of paying attention to obsolescence, paying attention to the quality of the product. I think there was a huge highlight on that. I think most companies have a pretty good understanding of trying to make sure what's the supply chain custody of these parts, where they come from, have they been tested. And then, the obsolescence part is just kind of it's just a bitter pill that has to be swallowed periodically, but it's going to get really old swallowing these bitter pills increasingly frequently. And then, then you've got like literal DoD, you've got contract requirements that say you can't just brush this off. You have to take this very seriously. This is mandatory if you're going to actually go along with the terms and conditions of this contract. So this is evolving quickly, and it's not just kind of whimsical guidance, it's mandated behavior. So it's kind of a win-win. Yeah, let's get schooled up on how to do it, but let's also therefore become compliant by having done the course.
Yeah, I would yeah, agree with what you've just said there. I also feel as well that, you know, we've got our course, which is, I say, is a generic one because it meets the syllabus of the IIOM. But actually, there's an opportunity here to start looking at acquisition programs, and actually how does obsolescence as a thread run through that acquisition program and procurement program. So, you know, we have a thing called a CAD mid-cycle. You probably have something very similar, but, you know, where you go from your concept, your demonstration, to your manufacturing, service and disposal. It's at that point where we need to be getting PMOs and those people involved in the procurement of asset on behalf of the end user, involved in understanding what the obsolescence requirements are. So when we are talking to designers, or they're talking to designers, you know, with the major design authorities, that they can say, well, have you got longevity in this design? You know, have you got 5 or 10 years? So you're not waiting until it gets to in service to find that you've only got, you know, 12 months, 18 months left, and you've got to do a redesign because all that time has been taken up, you know, during the manufacture and trials and then acceptance piece. So again, having courses that allow people to have that wider view and ask those you know, pokey questions that people don't necessarily like. So you can actually see the longevity, you can see the design, you can see the configuration of the design developing, and then you yourself as you have tools and go out into the marketplace and actually get a view for yourself on, you know, is that industrial partner telling me the truth? You know, so you're not taking their word for it. You've got evidence to sort of say, well, hang on a minute, you know, you said this is going to be 5 years worth of support here, and actually I think it's nearer 3. And then you've got, you know, 2 ends of the spectrum to start arguing about. So, yeah, very important.
Yeah, that's, you know, one of the things is, you know, it's designing for obsolescence, and that means a couple of things. You know, it means designing to avoid obsolescence, but at the same time, designing knowing that there's going to be obsolescence and trying to do the best you can do to make the fixes as easy as possible. And that can be anything from making sure you have alternates on your drawings so you don't have to go back and do that later, to, you know, I've talked about this before, I think on a podcast, but you know, I had something on the last program I worked where, you know, there was a box that we knew was going obsolete and was going to get replaced with another, you know, box, and it was a smaller box, so that was great. It was going to fit into the spacing, so that wasn't an issue. But the issue was that the power that was needed was different. So I said, look, run both power, you know, both voltages to that bay so that we can use either box in there. Do it now. Don't go back and have to retrofit later, because we know this is what's going to happen and we know what we're going to replace it with. But we're locked into this design, you know, for these, you know, first couple deliverables. So those are the kind of things that, you know, if you're paying attention and you're doing your due diligence during that design phase, you can at least ease the pain.
Yeah, again, I'd agree on that. I mean, just to extend on that one, I've seen, you know, in my experience, where the flavour of an obsolescence mitigation was to do a lifetime buy. I mean, we talk about interim buys now because you buy into a tech refresh program. But when we were doing a lifetime buy, you were buying 20 years worth of stock. And I'm going back some time because they were being stored in cardboard boxes. So you were getting tin whiskers going off, and you were getting, sulfur coming out of the cardboard onto the board and etching into the track, and all these sorts of things. But nobody was doing accelerated life tests, so you don't know that when you come to, you come to use that part in 20 years in time from the time that you procured them. You know, going back to your point, Vernon, things in that box have now changed. You know, you've got more heat running through. You're using non-leaded solder. The performance of the ICs is a lot quicker than it used to be. So you put your part into that environment, and the interface is totally wrong. So actually, was it the right decision to make back then, or should I have bought into a refresh program? It'd be really interesting to calculate the cost of doing a lifetime buy, storing the components, because obviously it needs to be in a nitrogen environment, all of which is all expensive. You need to do a program by which you check to see that those parts are still functional. So, and then once you've done those tests, you throw them away. So you have to buy more than you need, against actually buying into a product that will be updated, let's say every 18 months as a frequency, which gives you improved capability, but is backwards compatible to what your extant system is. I'd really be interested to see what those, is there a significant difference in cost to do that? But actually, the risk is probably more minimal to buy into a tech refresh program than it would be to try and see a part that you've stored for 20 years and expect it to work in an environment that it was never designed to operate in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. And Vern, I mean, I really like the idea of, I mean, get the design engineers, and you may love this V-shaped part, but there's just one like it. Find another part that's similar that has 4 manufacturers, and you can list all of these alternatives. There's so many different parts of an organization that if they have obsolescence in mind, it's going to mitigate the pain down the road. So I mean, that's a very clever thought. And then Tim, to your point, I mean, we've purchased some excess inventory from some big manufacturers before, and it's astonishing that they come in and like cardboard Amazon boxes. It's like this isn't an EST environment, this wasn't climate control, like what's going on here? So it's there's a whole spectrum of knowledge that needs to be kind of distributed.
Just going back to your point where you've said about you identify one supplier, then have multiple that you can still get the same product from. Within Allan Webb's Diamond OM tool, which is our bespoke tool for managing and monitoring bills of materials. So we don't compete with the major data houses like Silicon Experts and Z2 Data. We just focus on the bills of materials, of our clients, and that's what we manage. But again, it's not only do you need to manage the primary source of procurement, but also those subsidiary ones as well. So where you've got a unique part number for one, we have the ability, I'm sure many people do as well, where you can affiliate other companies to that part. But you've still got to go out and see if they exist. You've still got to find out if that product's still being manufactured. So although you've got one line, you can't wait and say, oh, the primary is no longer making, that 1, 2, 3, XYZ anymore. I'll go to my next supplier, and you find out that they're not making it either. So again, if you do have multiple sources, you've got to check those guys out as well to make sure that you have a full understanding of what the risk is associated with that system and hence the platform.
Yeah, and that's something that I had built prior and will be at some point hopefully building again is a tool that helps look at not just what the availability is of alternates for parts and things like that, but what do these equivalent parts look like compared to each other, and who's making how many, what's out in the market, those kind of things to say, what do we, if I have the option of these two parts, which one of these is got the higher chance of being sustainable for a longer time? And it's definitely something that we're lacking in the industry is those things. And earlier to what you were talking about, Tim, with the the last time buy versus redesign, there is a point somewhere where the cost to do the redesign and all the storage and everything else, the last time buy and all the storage hits where that redesign is. There is that point, and hopefully with AI we can start figuring out a way to calculate that and show that, to say, hey, up until this point is when it's more beneficial to do that buy, but now you're starting to get into that neighborhood of you better plan that refresh. And at the end of the day, I can't tell you, I don't think that many of the issues that I had to work on any of the programs I worked were ever fully solved. You solve where you can, and a last time buy is only good until you are able to do that redesign, unless you're the whole platform is being end of life.
No, again, I would agree with that statement. Yeah. I mean, just to add to that again, another concern that we see is, you go and buy or try and get information against a certain part, maybe an engine pack as an example. And the engine pack, when you buy that initially, you buy the pack and all the ancillaries. Those ancillaries become your spares. So you when you come round again, you'll be buying spares unless the engine's obviously defunct. And it's actually quite difficult sometimes I don't want to buy an engine pack, I just want the spares. So I think there's a lot of merit in trying to understand what sits behind that engine pack in terms of, what are those spares? Can I still buy them? Can I still procure those? And if so, then again, you can start looking at the risk and longevity of supporting that engine pack. But again, it's industry, trying to get more money out of the end user, to say, well, it's got to be a redesign, you need another engine. Well, actually, I don't. What I do need are the associated parts that go with the engine. So, that's a bit of an initiative that we should be looking at, to say, well, actually, what is the true obsolescence issue here? Is it the totality of the engine or the part, or is it the ancillaries? And there's more and more emphasis in, if I can buy just the ancillaries, then that means like the budget I've got, I can then spend that wisely elsewhere to support other parts of that platform, rather than just buying engine packs. I mean, engine packs are, quite sort of $1 million a shout, I'd expect. They're quite expensive. Yes. So yeah, it's I'm not saying it's philosophy change, but it's, again, there's only finite amount of money available to maintain these systems, and we need to use it wisely. And obsolescence is the banner that it comes under, although it shouldn't, because it should be day to day, and it shouldn't be that difficult, you say, to plan and understand what the procurement of those parts need to be on an as and when basis.
It seems like IIOM does a stellar job educating people, and the more people that are educated, if a third of at least electronic component suppliers don't bother to release the fact that they're obsoleting a part, this is a last time buy opportunity. It's like 99% of human issues are poor communication. And, if more buyers, more organizations could understand this obsolescence is a not quite an existential risk to our business, but it could be an existential risk to a business unit. We can lose a contract if we can't honor something. Then these companies that don't even bother to release last time buy notices would feel pressure, because their customers would say, hey, I need to know this. Right now, they're under no pressure to do it. They feel no obligation whatsoever. So every one of their customers potentially gets burned when they obsolete something. And, they're just not getting pushback. And I think, that's one of the truly honorable things that IIOM's trying to do, is just, you don't have to just sit here and deal with it. There's tools. You can get a plan in place. You can learn how to discuss this language. You can learn how to communicate with your suppliers. Just, make this a a partnership instead of I'm just buying stuff from you. It's a one-way street. Let's have it go both ways, where you're supporting me, I'm buying your stuff. You need to let me know what your plans are for the future. It's a win-win for both people. I don't think it's that hard for them to do either.
No, and again, that's agnostic of domains. I think traditionally, aerospace defence has been that environment where you would wait for your in tray to fill up with requirements, and then you go and place an order, and then you find actually that supplier has either gone out of business, changed the product, or I mean, in circumstances, don't want to operate in a certain environment. I mean, I've seen instances where people have got green credentials, they don't operate in a nuclear environment anymore. Whether that be supporting a weapon system, or whether that be supporting the nuclear industry from a power generation perspective. Just doesn't fit their green credentials. And again, something like that, you suddenly think, well, what am I going to do? Where do I go? Because you didn't see that coming. Whereas if you've got that continuum of interaction, whether that's just a phone call weekly to say, hi, how are things? What's the impact? Have you found anything? I mean, we have a thing called Project Workshare, which is a module that we add to our Diamond OM tool, which allows a supply chain. So you could go from the prime, you could go from the end user to the prime to a number of levels of indenture that would allow a portal for suppliers to only look at their bill of materials through security and admin rights. But as you get further up the tree where you do need that information, then you begin to see the totality of risk, at that system level, a subsystem, system, and platform level, and then maybe even fleet. And this can be with suppliers inputting information, maybe on a daily basis, rather than you having to wait for a monthly report or a quarterly report. So it's almost live. And so that's one thing that we're certainly pushing to get that collaboration, up and down the supply chain, because you can also understand what that resilience needs to be. Because it could be that you're working with, one or two companies that have got, one man, 10, or one person, 10 people that might not have an understanding of what they need to do. So again, you lean in and say, well, we can do that for you. Just give me your bill of materials. I'll load it up. I'll manage it. And I'll tell you if they've got a problem, because then that's a win-win again, because they're telling their suppliers or their other clients that they've got a problem that they need to manage. So yeah, data again and sharing information, in something like Workshare, I think is quite important.
Yeah, and we're doing very similar things here as well for the US base. So it's what it's all about, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, just learn and talk more.
Yeah.
It would solve a lot of problems here.
Yeah.
That's simple.
Yeah.
Of course, nothing in life is that simple, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, people come precious, don't they? I think they don't want to seem to be vulnerable, or that they've got risks and issues with products. But yeah, it's a fact of life. You can only do what you can do. So collaborate.
I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, certain organizations absolutely have the optics of the organization. We know everything, we're omnipotent, and showing weakness is inexcusable, and you can't plan for every contingency. And then we have seen some customers that are really just like devastated by something that they'll spend a fortune buying parts that there's 1,200 left on the planet. And the people that have them know what they're worth. And just to your point, Tim, I mean, just communicate a little bit more. Don't be 100% confident in something that you're not checking on consistently. Just because you bought something 3 years ago, don't feel like 100% that they're going to be sitting there for you to buy. It's communication would change, make you feel a whole lot better rather than just bluffing.
Yeah.
Because again, I think, just from what you said there, you're opening up. I know this is part of your specialism. You're opening yourself up to the counterfeit market, aren't you? In the grey market.
Yeah, 100%.
And everything. Yeah.
We see buyers. I mean, it makes me, I either feel physically ill or I laugh when we get buyers sending us parts they'd like to buy, and they're asking us if they're good on eBay. Like, what are you doing? No, don't go to eBay. Crazy. So I mean, you open yourself. You basically, if you've got a contract, you don't have an alternative, and it's not an ideal position to be in. I don't. We like to, and I like the fact that you said win-win. I mean, we really want to be win-win partner, and when we see our customers in a position like that, that's unfortunate. And it was entirely avoidable.
And I'll just add to that. So when I started off many moons ago, one of the things we would be doing, you'd look at a board, because it was quite a complex board. It was wire wound. You didn't necessarily have tracks and things like this. So they're very complex in what they did. But we would look at the board, and you would make some engineering judgment on, well, what if that part there goes obsolete? What am I going to do? Oh, well, I can go and get there were various organisations in the UK. There's Charcroft, there's Winslow Adaptics. These are people that can manufacture OEM, almost OEM product based on drawings and things. So that's another reason why you want to protect your data, and why you need that data, so you can go out and 3D print now and all that sort of opportunities. So again, it's having an understanding and that plan in place to say, if that part goes obsolete, then this is what you're going to do. And in order to do that, you need to have that collaboration and relationship, with your Charcrofts, with your Winslow Adaptics. So they know, they can tell you what they need, and it's just a question of, the funding then, and off you go, and you're done. But at the moment, we don't have that long-term view anymore. Everything's done on the 11th hour, and your opportunities are very minimal. And because they're minimal, they're very expensive. And of course, if you then have to go into that, costs of, doing a minor or major redesign, it means you haven't got any funding to do anything else. So again, you end up with reduced capability.
The more IIOM gets the word out, it would be very nice if there was a inverse relationship between more people taking IIOM courses and less just-in-time delivery attitudes.
Yeah.
You will, if once you learn the one thing, you'll realize the other thing is foolish.
Yeah. And I think, by taking an IIOM course, and as I say, it doesn't matter what function you're in, whether you're in procurement, supply chain, commercial, getting your commercials right, making sure that you ask for that data, that information, getting your data identification, as in, what is it you want, what format does it come in, when are you going to, what's the frequency that you're going to receive it, but more importantly, what are you going to do with it when you get it? So I think, across an enterprise wide, obsolescence or the IIOM training suits everybody, because everybody gets an understanding of obsolescence risk and what the impact is by making the wrong decision at the wrong time.
Yeah. And I'd love to see more executive level people there. I mean, at least one, somebody to get a handle on things, just to understand what engineers and buyers are going through procurement, get a CFO there so that to understand why we do get these sudden, financial shocks to the system because the planning wasn't done properly. And then, then the CFO will have buy-in to allow for more training. There's, it's a good little virtuous circle there you can create.
No, I'd agree.
Yeah. And so, with our trainings, we're going to be trying to do some different things in the near term, looking to start doing some different sessions, starting with one close to me in Florida, and then also looking to kind of join up with some of the conferences that the people who might be interested in the training would be going to, so that, you know, you don't have to travel twice. If you're already out at a conference, you can just do the training, you know, while you're there. And of course, if anybody is looking for us to come into a, you know, their business, so, you know, you're a defense contractor or, you know, a big manufacturer or anything, and, you know, you want us to come in and train, you know, around 10 or so people, you know, we can come in and do that as well. And, you know, get your certifications and do all those things. We are looking at doing online at some point, but it's going to take a little bit probably to get that where we need it to be to do it effectively. And we are going to be posting a survey out there here shortly, just to get some people's interest in, you know, how do they want to do it? What are they comfortable with? You know, to help us frame, you know, where we should focus our efforts as far as, you know, regional versus at conferences versus, you know, everybody wants to only have the training opportunities in Florida so they can convince their boss that they have to come to Florida in the winter, you know, whatever it may be.
We're only going to hold them in the Florida Keys, so everyone's
Yes.
forced to go hang out
Yeah.
Key West or Marathon.
Yep. So, all right. Is there anything else? I think it's been an awesome discussion.
No, it's
Yeah,
been
agreed.
tremendous. Thank you very much for inviting me.
All right. So yes, thanks for attending, and you know, thank you guys for speaking. This is definitely the first of these, because I think that these are good conversations, and I think there's some good you know, knowledge that we can share between, you know, Tim's experience and my experience. We'll get David on one of these, Tim's colleague, who's got a lot of experience as well. So so yeah, so look forward to some of those things, and you know, as Tim said, when I edit the video to repost it, we'll put in some information about the actual courses and things like that. We'll embed it in the video. So
Just
Cool.
a thought there, Vernon. When you it might be useful to ask in your survey, are there any particular topics that people would like to software obsolescence always is a popular one.
yeah.
It's not that complicated, but people seem to make it so. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Cool.
All
Thank
right.
you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Have a good weekend.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care. Bye-bye.
Have a good night, sir.